Sometimes evil's shadow appears glaringly and horribly obvious. A brutal army bulldozing through another land, bent on bloody conquest. That's evil's shadow. A domineering spouse and hidden but hideous physical control or financial control or social control. That's evil's shadow. Proposed new laws designed to disable faithful witness to Jesus. Yeah, that's evil's shadow. And sometimes it's unmissably obvious. Sometimes evil's shadow appears far more subtly, so that you wonder, is that even really evil? Lusting after someone else's hot hatch, which may be autobiographical. A Facebook news feed that shrinks your dignity as God's image bearer and treats you pretty much like a loaf of bread, turning you into money, while feeding you stories and images that just drip, 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 drip away, and they ought to sting your conscience, drip, 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 and they certainly grieve God, drip, 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 but instead what they slowly do is they immunise you to the corrupt values, drip, 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 of this dying world. Isn't it just what the algorithm coughed up? Somehow it thought I might be interested. Yes, but the algorithm is corrupt because of who designed it. Drip, drip, drip. There's a reason that I now look at Facebook a maximum of 6 times per week. And sometimes I wonder, is that still too much? Drip, drip, drip. Evil's shadow lurks. Now, one more. An economic system perfectly designed to distract you from God and train you to worship money. Also, drip, drip, drip. Evil's shadow lurks there. During the week, I was so thankful and actually amazed when my Year 2 school scripture class became pin drop quiet, as we wondered together whether this particular rich man, face to face with the living Lord Jesus, would turn out to love God more than money. Or maybe he would turn out to love God less than money. Which would it be? And they clearly sensed in the classroom, they wouldn't have put it this way, but they clearly sensed that's evil's dark shadow. To love God less than how you love money. As we now head towards the sublime closing chapters in Revelation together, and let me tell you, I'm really looking forward to chapters 19, 20, 21, 22. I'm really looking forward to them. Was I looking forward to chapter 17? Not so much. Some of this is far from pleasant. We are vividly presented with, especially if you look at chapter 17 and put chapter 21 alongside it, we're presented with 2 women. Or is it 2 cities? And the fact is, each one is presented both as a woman and as a city. And the second one, which we're not looking at today, but is in chapter 21, this woman city is resplendent with purity and beauty and dressed as a bride. I'm looking forward to getting there. The first one, here in chapter 17 today, also looks dazzling, appears so enticing, but actually is impure to the core. And the very obvious challenge as you read this whole section of Revelation is, which of those will you side with? Because you will side with one or the other. There's no neutral Switzerland option sitting on the fence somewhere in the middle. Which one, which woman, which city will you embrace? The pure or the impure? Which one will you allow to shape your own eternal destiny? And will you choose wisely or foolishly? So yes, of course, I am looking forward to chapters 19, 20, 21 and 22. Absolutely, unquestionably. But before we can arrive at glory unveiled, we are given these two necessary, grisly chapters on the heart of evil and the end of evil this Sunday and today and next Sunday. These are the kinds of chapters it might be tempting just to skip over as quickly as possible. Why are these two chapters so necessary, though? They are necessary because they alert us to the true deceitfulness of evil. And they assure us that evil will not triumph in the end. And they persuade us that whatever pressures and pains we might fear, the price of following Jesus is so much less in the end than the price of not following Jesus. The price of following Jesus is so much less in the end than the price of not following Jesus. I hardly think that John the Apostle enjoys this vivid vision as it arrives and then he writes it down, but he needs it, and the first century church communities of Western Turkey, the original audience of these visions, they urgently need it, and down through the ages, we need it too, it turns out. We need this too. So the vision. John is shown the most unholy of women, or the most proud of earthly empires. There were coins in circulation in the late first century. I have a photo here. And you can see on the right-hand side there is the goddess, the Roman goddess Roma. And symbolically, she's sitting on 7 hills. Now, by this time, there were actually more than 7 hills that Rome was built on, but that had become the symbolic number. When you talk about 7 hills, you're talking about Rome. This did actually get me wondering, a question I've never wondered before. When they named 7 hills, I mean here in Sydney, whatever were they thinking? Did they imagine somehow that this was going to be the world centre of some grand future empire? The hub of commerce? I have a friend in 7 Hills. I reckon if I see him possibly in the next few weeks, I just might go and ask him, what's the deal with the 7 hills? And are there 7 hills in 7 Hills? I don't know. Rome, symbolically, sat on 7 hills. Babylon is code, first century code for Rome. But not just Rome. Babylon is code for every earthly empire bent on power and rubbishing allegiance to Christ. The picture of Babylon includes, well, obviously, ancient Babylon, and you might add to it ancient Assyria and the medieval Mongols and the modern empire of Apple and so many others. Why the double picture, woman and city? Because it's not just about power, brute power and predominance, the empire. It's also about corruption. This dazzling, seductive prostitute. She herself must not be trusted. She uses people. She uses small and great in verse 2 for selfish gain. She entices the world with a dazzling but deceitful beauty. She always seeks to entrap, enchant, ensnare. She seeks to intoxicate all who dwell on the earth. Last weekend, Julie and I were in the train carriage travelling home from the Opera House, and in our carriage, just a couple of seats away from us, were two generations of the same family, obviously at various levels of intoxication. And it reminded me of how ugly drunkenness becomes, because the way they treated each other was loud and rude and mean, and they seemed... Obviously, there's a disinhibition that comes with drunkenness. They were blind and numb to how the way their words might impact each other, and even how their words might and actions might impact other people in the carriage. It's just ugly. And the thing is, the more you drink what Lady Babylon offers, the less you can resist her. The more you drink what Lady Babylon offers, the less you can resist her, and the more numb you become towards God. That's what intoxication does. You become less able to resist, and you become numb, in this case, towards God. Worse, it turns out that this prostitute has power that, in verse 15, stretches to all people and all nations and touches every land and every heart with her corrupting influence. I thought she's like Shelob, the great spider in Tolkien, spinning her sinister web, except this is a worldwide web, though not forever. I'll read again. One of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came to me and said, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on the many waters. With her the kings..." And now this becomes kind of science fiction-y, dystopian. "With her the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Who is she? She's the great power persuading you to seek satisfaction anywhere but God. She's aiming for you to seek satisfaction anywhere but God, through great prophets or false gods or intimate relationships or high politics or shallow entertainment or sheer money love, whatever it is to distract you from God, she's happy. All are tarnished by her. And now we watch as this vision morphs from sitting on the waters, which symbolises her reach to every corner of the world, now to sitting on the great beast. And who is this great beast? The beast is Satan's deputy. We met the beast back in chapter 13. The beast is Satan's deputy, the viceroy of the dragon. He's 3-star general over all the forces of evil, and in fact he's a parody of Christ holding all the world enthralled. Verse 3, "Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a desert. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns." It now turns out that these heads and horns also represent empires, and the woman is dressed to dazzle like some sultry screen goddess, seducing nations through commerce and false religion. I wonder, does she control the beast, or does the beast control her? Or do they each think they control each other? It's like a cross between a supernatural fashion show and a supernatural rodeo. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names, and had 7 heads and 10 horns. It's grotesque. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet colours of royalty, and was glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with the abominable things and filth of her adulteries. This is truly a dark, dark vision. Here's a word that I've wanted to use in some sermon for so long. Do not be ensorcelled by her. Do not be bewitched by her. What she offers may appear tremendously enticing, fetching, irresistible, a thrilling connection with something greater, a connection with something safe and glittering and successful, but it's a veneer of glory, hiding a heart of corruption. Sometimes I wonder about this as on those somewhat rare occasions, when I gaze up at the dazzle of the nighttime cityscape from Circular Quay. It's so brilliant. It's wow, someone knows about success. But then if you ask the question, what's behind it all? What's the heart behind all that? And the answer is greed. And yes, it might look magnificent. Yes, it might look praiseworthy. Yes, it might look as though, okay, here's a connection to something greater. But actually, it's just a veneer of glory. That's not real glory. And what's hidden at the heart is ugly. This title was written on her forehead, verse 5, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. The city of Babel in Genesis 11 is where humankind made its first attempt to storm heaven, and then later in the Old Testament, Babylon became the archetypal enemy of God's people and the epitome of human power in defiance against God. Babylon the Great. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. Lady Babylon stands for all earthly empires set up in defiance of God. I'll say that again. Lady Babylon stands for all earthly empires set up in defiance of God. And in particular, the prostitute embodies the attractions of money and materialism and trade, commerce. That's what she represents. And the beast embodies the power of the state and politics and empires. And hand in hand, the powers of state and the powers of commerce, what are they trying to do? They are trying to squash knowledge of God. If they possibly can, they are trying to obliterate true knowledge of God. And so, as I was thinking this through, I pictured the proud pyramids of Giza, the proud Eiffel Tower, beautiful, so proud. I pictured the proud flags of Wall Street. And together, what do they say? Who needs God? Aren't we enough? Lady Babylon stands for all earthly empires set up in defiance of God. That's why she's drunk with the blood of those who faithfully bear testimony to Jesus. Now, I know you know that in some parts of the world, all you need to do if you're hoping to squash knowledge of God and eradicate any hint of following Jesus faithfully, in some parts of the world, all you have to do is kill Christians. And it's been estimated how many of our fellow believers lose their lives each year because they're believers for no other reason. And the estimate is 90,000 a year. That's 10 per hour. That's 5 while I preach. Closer to home, do you know, in Victoria today, if some fellow approaches me and confides, Stephen, I've been wrestling with sexual holiness and purity towards my sisters in Christ. Can you help? Can you pray for me? Well, of course I would respond. Of course I would do it. Of course I would help. Of course I would give counsel. Of course I would pray. Of course. But in Victoria today, if instead he comes and says, Stephen, I've been wrestling with sexual holiness and how to have a God-pleasing purity despite my same-sex desires, can you help? Can you pray for me? Well, in Victoria today, for me to respond is illegal. For me to give counsel is illegal. For me to pray is illegal. Can you believe that? To pray is illegal. And, in case you haven't been watching, exactly the same moves are now afoot in our own New South Wales Parliament. And it's the powers of state and the powers of commerce working hand in hand, in tandem, in league, seeking to squash the knowledge of God. So in case you think what we read in Revelation 17 looks dystopian and unreal and this isn't about our world, this is about our state. This month. Lady Babylon stands for all earthly empires set up in defiance of God and seeking to squash any true knowledge of Him. I expect that such pressures will increase, not decrease. Proud, proud voices will shout, oh, don't we get to define our own morality now? Don't we get to create our own stories now? Who needs God anymore? Aren't we enough? Isn't God more harmful than helpful? That's the spirit of Lady Babylon. Now, don't abandon ship. Remember, in the end, the price of following Jesus is a whole lot less than the price of not following Jesus. Don't abandon ship. But what we read here, this is real in our day. Having been shown this fearful vision, this is an unusual phenomenon in Revelation. John is given an angelic explanation. He doesn't yet know where the vision will finally end. He doesn't know if it will. If I were John, I think I would be utterly bamboozled and overwhelmed. This is just going on and on and on and on, and it's overwhelming, and surely this can't be the end, can it? At this point, John is given this angelic explanation in verses 7 to 18. I have 4 comments about the explanation. First, the beast. We were introduced to the beast back in chapter 13. This scarlet beast, viceroy of the dragon, deputy of Satan, This scarlet beast is an impressive, but in the end, hollow imitation of Jesus, a parody of Jesus. So the particular repeated expression in verse 8 and verse 11, that he once was, now is not, and yet will come, that sounds like a cartoon version of death and resurrection. He's trying to show this veneer of glory. Now, actually, he's not nearly so impressive as the real Jesus, who has him decisively defeated already, and yet with this veneer of glory, no wonder so many are deceived. The beast is a parody, a poor imitation of Jesus. Second, what about the head and horns? Many have tried to figure out, is there any possible way of lining up these 7 kings plus 1, the 7 heads in verses 10 and 11, or is there any way of lining up the 10 horns in verses 12 and 13 to particular historical kings or emperors or even perhaps empires? Many have tried. There is no neat answer. But the bigger point is glaringly clear. No matter how intimidating, no matter how impressive, no matter how apparently glorious, no matter how long-lived these oppressive kings and empires may appear to be, it's only temporary. It's only ever temporary. So do not fear. In verse 12, each horn receives power for how long? 1 hour. No more. They will each go to their destruction. And moreover, from verse 10, it's very clear, we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. So don't give up now. Whatever you do, don't give up now. Beyond that, I think there's not much point attempting to decode the micro details from such a vivid vision. But the main point, the main thrust is so clear. These empires, they're only temporary. And we're closer to the end than to the beginning. So don't give up and don't be afraid. So we've touched on the beast, we've touched on the heads and horns. I noticed, this is my third comment, even though the woman and the beast operate in tandem, in verses 16 and 17, there's hatred between them. Do you see that? The beast and Lady Babylon hate each other. Now, is it because they know evil can't be trusted, and so they can't actually trust each other? Or is it because they hate being used and they know, hang on, you're using me and you're using me? Hatred will bring Lady Babylon, all those proud earthly empires, hatred will bring Lady Babylon to ruin in the end, as Jesus foreshadowed. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. In the end, even the greatest of earthly powers, and in the Bible I'm thinking of Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus, in John's own day, the Emperor Domitian, and then all other earthly empires, they all turn out in the end to be instruments of God. They're like Lego blocks in his great purposes. Do you see that? Their evil purpose in verse 13 actually gets woven into his grand design in verse 17. And fourth, yes, this vision is disturbing to read, but it's far from hopeless. Amid the darkness and fearful mystery of, well, the dazzling prostitute, the far-reaching waters, the scarlet beast with its seemingly invincible heads and horns, the oppression of the church, amid all of that, where's the Lamb once slain? Where is the great Lion of Judah? For this entire build-up of great powers is a mighty, though futile, attempt to dethrone him. As you gaze around our world today, Revelation drills into our hearts, in league with the spiritual forces of evil, the unspoken goal of so many earthly empires, with Lady Babylon lurking behind them, whether they know it or not, whether they say it or not. The unspoken goal of so many earthly empires is somehow, were it possible, to dethrone Jesus. That's the goal. To dethrone Jesus. And if you have eyes to see, it's there in politics. It's there in the giants of industry and commerce. You know, stories about the great companies of our land. What's the goal? To dethrone Jesus. There are parts of the educational guild where you see it. The longing to dethrone Jesus. In grand architecture, can we dethrone Jesus? In journalism, in entertainment, if you have eyes to see, what is being sought, the common goal, somehow, is to dethrone Jesus. But he's the Lion of Judah. He's the Lamb once slain. He's the Emperor of all emperors. He's the Captain of captains and the Titan of titans. He's the Lord of lords and King of kings. And so whatever power they may marshal against him, can he be dethroned? What encouragement is this? Verse 14, they will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them, because he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And notice, we are tucked into this vision, and with him will be his called, chosen and faithful followers. What a sweet encouragement. He cannot be dethroned. They have no hope in the end, however invincible they may seem. We're closer to the end than to the beginning. Don't give up now. No matter how long-lived, no matter how oppressive they may appear to be, it's only temporary. As I brood on this vision, the overriding impact on me is, do not fear. Do not fear. Sometimes we may feel defenceless, but the truth is we are far from defenceless. Do not fear. We are not powerless pawns on history's chessboard. Do not fear. We're not forgotten underlings. We are foot soldiers of the King of Kings, who cannot be dethroned. Do not fear. He's the Lamb once slain. He is worthy of all worship. So do not fear. And what's more, we are known, we are loved, we are called, we are chosen. He makes us faithful and wise. So do not fear. As I follow and serve Christ, there's a whole stack of things that might make me afraid. An unremitting crucible of pain. I might be afraid. Suffering acute disrespect. I might be afraid. Bruising trials, if I knew they were coming, I might be afraid. Potential new laws that pressure me to water down the truth about Jesus' lordship. I can see them coming, and I could be afraid. The bullying pressure to bow to Lady Babylon. I could be afraid of that. The temptation to worship money and fail in faithfulness, because that's what our economic system is perfectly designed for. I could be afraid of that. Could there be such pressure that my faith might fail and the tempter prevail? I could be afraid of that. And this vision pounds again and again and again. Do not fear, do not fear, do not fear. We're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. Don't give up now. Do not fear. However oppressive they are, it's only temporary. Do not fear. Jesus cannot be dethroned. Do not fear. My name, verse 8, is written in the book of life. So do not fear. Now, this is a chapter that we could easily have, I could have chosen for us to skip over. It's a bit heavy. It's a bit disturbing. Surely at least we can look at chapter 17 and 18 together and get it over and done with. Why is it's so unsettling? Why is it so necessary? It's necessary to warn us of the true deceitfulness and the pressure of deceitfulness, the deceitful pressure of evil. To warn us, this is necessary. To assure us, Jesus cannot be dethroned. Evil will not triumph. Evil must not triumph. Evil cannot triumph in the end. This chapter warns us and assures us and persuades us. It persuades us that whatever pressures and pains we might fear, the fact is, all those costs of following Jesus, in the end, are far, far less than the costs of not following Jesus. On that day, which side will you be on?